Guys, welcome back to the Contech Onsite podcast. I want to extend a warm welcome to the one and only Steve Severance. Steve is the Director of Growth at Masdar City. We're excited to discuss the relationship between construction technology and sustainability and its importance in helping integrate and building energy infrastructure, as well as how Masdar City, a flagship project in the Middle East, is integrating sustainable practices and creating a built environment of the future. Super excited to have you on. Steve, how are you today?
Well, even better after starting to talk to you, because that is my favorite introduction that I've ever gotten, Ellie. So excited to be with you guys at Contech Onsite.
Okay, great. Steve, can you share with us what Masdar City is, what it means to be the Director of Growth, and how you got to this role?
Absolutely, because I wanted to be the Director of Growth and Fun, but HR said I had to focus on growth. So honestly, I've been at Masdar City for 14 years now. We are an initiative by the Abu Dhabi government to really do two things. A is to create a showcase of sustainable living and R&D and the technologies that are needed to create the net zero world that we're going to, but also real effort by Abu Dhabi to say, although we are a hydrocarbon economy, a hydrocarbon-based economy in the past, we need to move toward a knowledge economy. And we want to really stay relevant in the next phase of energy, which is renewable energy and sustainability. And so all of that new energy comes out of Masdar City. And I think that you can see what's going on this year with the year of sustainability in the UAE, and all focused on COP28, which is coming at the end of November and December here. So a real excitement in the country and in the region about sustainable development. And my whole time at Masdar City, I've really gotten the chance to work with a lot of technology companies, to go out there and look for the technology companies, work with them, help bring them to Masdar City, use Masdar City as a platform where they can showcase their sustainable technologies, their clean tech, and then use Masdar City as a base to jump off and serve the region from. And so that, it really came around to grow. And one of the other things I do, the marketing department reports to me. And so, we've got a great team of marketing to be able to showcase what we're doing here and to get that message out. So both bring in the technologies that we need, then also let the world know about them and what we're doing here. So appreciate you giving us the opportunity to talk a bit about what's going on.
Amazing. It's really exciting because Masdar, whoever's not familiar with it, really is a flagship of what sustainable development can be in the future. And so I'm also, Steve, I'm super excited having you on, and really thank you for joining. Really one of the questions I think could be really interesting for our audience is, as a Director of Growth, you really get to see the entire technology adoption process. It's starting from the analysis and the research and choosing the right products, all the way through the piloting process, and then monitoring the results and the performance of different technology. We have a very big base audience of innovators, and I'd love to know, how would you recommend, them entering this process? How could they ensure that they storm this long process sometimes? And then how do you measure their success, at the end of the road?
Well, I would say we operate in a few different areas. The areas that are essential to our operations. And then we look for the best commercially available technology. We don't take risks with the people who are living and working at Masdar City. We don't take risks in your apartment building. We make sure we use technology that is proven to the point that we're comfortable that it works, but we're pushing the envelope by combining the best of these technologies. So we are looking at, we set strict goals, we set tough goals around the sustainability of buildings. So we say, okay, what's the best technology we have? I also want cost targets as well too, because you can be sustainable, but if you become so expensive that no one can afford to have their office there, no one can afford to live there, you're not truly sustainable. We need to be sustainable economically as well too. Then we'd say other areas where we can work with companies and create a plot or create a land space where they can come in and use their technology and say, okay, we're going to demonstrate this for you. And in those cases, we often work with the universities. We've got really 3 universities on site that are essential to creating the sustainable future. So the first is surrounding me right now is Mohammed bin Zayed University for Artificial Intelligence. And they are also, as being part of Masdar City, are really coming around and say, okay, we need to be focused on how do we create a more sustainable future. Khalifa University has had researchers here for many years. Originally it was Masdar Institute, and then moved to form a larger university, Khalifa University, with 2 other Abu Dhabi universities. But they have done a lot of work in solar, a lot of work in storage, and and a lot of work in materials here at Masdar City. So you're actually seeing some of the work done by professors a few years ago. Now they're actually companies that are funded by our investment arm, the Catalyst. So we've got two companies now that have come directly out of labs at Masdar City, as well as other technologies around. And in those places, we don't need to worry about, okay, is this going to affect the lifestyle here? Because it's early stage technology. So those are areas where we say, what is important to the UAE goals? How do we fit in with the UAE goals of reducing our carbon emissions, of reducing our energy consumption, and of creating a more sustainable life, and of supporting those universities in there? And the third university is the Technology Innovation Institute, which is also here at Masdar City. So we work with those, in those areas, we get to work with the universities. And then the third area, I'd say, is somewhere in between. Areas like transportation, where we can afford to take some bold stances, and I would say early on, we've been using fully electric transportation for Masdar City operations since the beginning. We were the very first people in the UAE to have electric vehicles here, and we implemented the PRT system, so it's personal rapid transit, and what I would call is almost a horizontal elevator. It's autonomous, it runs by itself. You go in, you press the button, but it's used. It's like an elevator. You may get in there with a few other people going to your office, and it's used constantly throughout the day. But it's kind of the best of private transportation with the best of public transportation. So we're able to take some risks there and push the envelope. And because if something doesn't work, we can move forward with a different solution. So for instance, the very first electric vehicles we implemented at Masdar City turned out to be really not ready for this climate. I don't know if you know it or if your listeners are going to understand this, but batteries do not do well in extreme heat. Batteries also don't well in extreme cold. So if you are from a very cold part of the world, you often plug in your car overnight so that the battery will start in the morning. Batteries like a nice solid temperature, much like we like. So we started with a company that just had a product that wasn't quite ready for the UAE's heat yet. Now the next generation, much more ready. Now, the next generation, we went to autonomous vehicles. We actually worked with the autonomous vehicle provider, a French company called Navia, to make it ready for this climate. So more air conditioning, more installation of the doors, better films for the windows, everything we could do to make it climate ready here. So I would say those are the three areas that we work. One, we're a little more conservative on. One, we're completely open for new technologies and can be quite aggressive there. And the third one's a bit in the middle, where we say, look, this has to work, this has to be safe, but we can take some chances because we can always switch it later down the line.
Okay, amazing. So it's super interesting. I think that I'd break down this question in, the response, just I'd love to pick your brain on it. But first of all, you're talking about a certain stage of technology that becomes more relevant, right? It sounds like because there's already people living right in Masdar, and there are certain chances you're willing to take, right? When it comes to the type of technology you'd be adopting through the I guess, the construction process, right? The Contech Onsite podcast has a lot of emphasis on the construction element of these cities. And so really when you're looking at the right product for you guys is going to be somewhere where they've already have a proven track record of succeeding within a built environment. What is could you give us maybe an example of a technology that would fit in this stage and what that process would be like working with you guys?
Well, here I would say, look, if we looked at the built environment, we're going to take no risks around the safety or security of the people that are here, but we will push the boundaries in terms of design. So our buildings all start with a blank piece of paper, and we say we want these certain results. And some of the things that I'm gonna mention a couple things here that your audience will ask and say, is that really technology? But it is. We put all of the emergency exit stairs outside the buildings. People have been doing that that's not a new technology, but it enables us to save, to reduce the energy, to reduce both the capital cost, because if you have the emergency exit stairs inside the building, you need all the emergency backup in there to be able to evacuate people in case of emergency. So lighting and air and fans. Now, we also shade all of the glass. So we shade the windows there. We also have a ratio that we believe is the best ratio for allowing natural light in, but keeping heat out. So we use about 40% glass to facade. So for about 40% of the facade is glass. These are all things we do that would not be considered high tech, but enable us to meet our sustainability goals in a way that really increases the building performance and keeps the cost affordable. Now, in terms of other thing, now then we add on the technology in there. Other things we do for instance, like MEP, we try and right size the MEP. So we say, okay, we are building LEED Platinum, in cases now net zero buildings. How do we build these buildings? Oh, well, you can make the fan coil units and the air handling units sized appropriately. You don't need to size them for a traditional building that might not have any sort of certification or might not be focused on reducing consumption. So you can actually take costs out of the building is there too. So we've got 3 buildings coming up that I think are pretty exciting to talk about, and because they're all net zero buildings. So we have the first 5,000 square meter net zero buildings be the first one that will be completed in the UAE. This will be done before COP this year. So we need to complete this in November. And that's a big challenge. So say you look at something like solar panels, which have to be on there, have to be on the roof, have to be on the parking lot if we're going to get to net zero. So you go onto the market and say, okay, what's the most efficient solar panels we can buy? And the absolute most efficient ones are ones that go on satellites. By the way, this is the ones that go on satellites. So the satellite industry, actually we take learnings from the satellite industry and bring it into the building industry, because those are also the most expensive. But the satellites have such a limited space and such valuable real estate, then we take the learnings from there and we bring it into the construction industry and say, okay, let's get the best available, best commercially available ones. But our architects are the ones who are responsible for building buildings where we can integrate the solar panels and where we can put as many of them as possible. So I think the next building that's coming on, the next net zero building, is going to be a 10,000 square meter, and it's in our Masdar City Center, Masdar City Square, and that's it. That's about a 50,000 square meter development that will be complete next summer. So that one won't be complete by COP, but the entire building, the headquarters building is net zero, is 10,000 square meters of this. It's covered and shaded in a way that enables the solar panels to get maximum sun, but also provide shading at the same time. So a lot of what we're doing in there is saying, how do we use the architecture and use the design to put these technologies in? And then of course we layer on top with building management systems, with the smart technologies that enable us to monitor the building performance, to tweak the building performance, and be able to really say each year on year, our facilities management team has a goal of taking these highly efficient buildings, operating them a little more efficiently. So each year, how do we take energy consumption out of the building by being just a little smarter about how we operate?
Super interesting. And I really love the emphasis that it's not technology, but it's innovation, right? And I think there's a lot of confusion. At the end of the day, also our company, Global Construction Tech, right, that we focus primarily on innovation in the industry, and there's a confusion between, technology being a tool for innovation, then actually talking about, how could we actually improve the built environment. And I think you gave some really incredible examples over there. And it's really interesting to kind of understand how you guys are looking at this so holistically in terms of a process and in terms of an environment. It leads me really into the next question, which is Masdar City is really taking a stand on sustainable development. And as the forefront of adopting new technology, what would you say are the greatest hurdles? And can you give us some examples?
Well, I would say one of the things you mentioned there is exactly right. Is it innovation or technology? What are you trying to accomplish with each building that you do? And so absolutely the one thing we will never compromise on is the sustainability of it. And then all of the technology that goes into the building has to support that goal. So each of the buildings has, of course, we start with a brief like everybody else. Okay, what's this? How many square meters do we have? What type of building is it? Residential? Is it office? Is it food and beverage? Is it R&D? And then we say, okay, how much is the budget for this? And then what is the most sustainable building we can get? And with that, we look at each of the technologies that goes into that. But I think you rightly pointed out, and I appreciate that, is that the innovation comes from the holistic approach. The innovation comes from the holistic approach. So everything we do needs to actually specifically support that approach of what do we want to get? We want to get a highly sustainable building. So we've learned along the way. So 10 years ago, we were the first people doing LEED Platinum buildings here. We now have, as far as I know, the world's largest collection of LEED Platinum buildings, of both residential and office space. And we have more than 85,000 square meters of LEED Platinum buildings under construction. So, and we use ESADAMA, the local rating, the Abu Dhabi rating, which is based on LEED loosely, but is more focused on the local built environment. And so all the buildings coming up that I'm talking about, 3 different major projects, all of them are LEED Platinum and Essadama 4 Pearl, and each of them have a net zero component. So that's the sustainability push we want to take, because with COP28 coming and the UAE signing on, by the way, like most of the world, to a carbon neutrality by 2050. That is only 27 years away. That is a lot of work. That's a lot of renewable energy that needs to be built. That's a lot of electric vehicles that need to be implemented. That's a lot of green hydrogen projects that need to be done. And it's a lot of work on agriculture and our food systems that need to take place as well too. But a lot of work around the built environment. How do we use less? Because we believe that every electron that you never need to use is more sustainable than one produced by solar or wind. So at Masdar City, it's a focus on how do we use less. So getting to net zero buildings on site, which wasn't possible when we started more than 15 years ago. Now, because of technology changes, because of economic changes around solar, and a lot of that driven by work done around Masdar City, we're able to start doing net zero energy projects. And in the future, what I'd say is the next phase after these 3 major projects, we're looking at full net zero projects. So you'd have a 30 to 35,000 square meter project, and it's all net zero. Now, that's not done yet. That's not designed yet. But it is our goal. So every time we hit a goal, we say, what's the next stage? How can we push the boundaries farther? How can we use design, technology, and the innovation you talked about to come together to say, we're going to keep pushing the boundaries. We're going to keep getting better. And by the way, I think people ask me all the time here, so the Saudis are doing this project. They say it's so sustainable. Oh, they're doing a project in Dubai. They say it's so sustainable. I think that's really a validation of what Masdar is meant to be, which is a catalyst for sustainability. If we're going to reach those very ambitious targets, every developer needs to be a sustainable developer. Every company needs to be a sustainability company. Every country needs to have their focus and push in sustainability and how they're gonna make it. So we are heartened and excited to see more developers, more countries, more governments in this region make a stand around sustainability and say, we're gonna get there, we're gonna do this. Because 15 years ago, people would come visit me at Masdar City and say, why would Abu Dhabi do this? Why, you've got all the oil, why would you do this? Now everyone looks back and says, well, yes, of course. But that's not an obvious step. That happened because the leadership here put a stake in the ground and said, we want to do this and we want to do it sustainably and we want to demonstrate to the region. So the catalyst part of it that we always wanted to be, I think has worked out, honestly, in my mind, even better than expected.
So I'd like to pick at, really as an early adopter, you guys took a stand on this thing 15 years ago, way before anybody else was really thinking about sustainability. Right? What do you think was the cost of that for Masdar? Is it money that they had to invest before anybody else? The trials, the burdens that happened throughout the way. How do you think today a company coming in is actually benefiting off, this early, I'd say, research, and implementation? And maybe I'll lead it on with the second part of the question is, given today is so much more ripe, what are the things that are holding back other developers from adopting sustainability?
Okay.
Sustainable approach. Yeah.
Elliot, great questions. And I would say there's been a sea change. People used to come when you said, you're right, 15 years ago, we were the only people talking about sustainability here, not globally. Look, I have to appreciate what goes on around the world and countries that have been on this journey at the same time we've been on it. So appreciate what's gone on globally, but really regionally. And that region's a pretty big region, not just the GCC, but all of MENA really. We were really the first people talking about how to be more sustainable. And people came and said, oh, we'd love to do this, but it's too expensive. Sustainability is just a cost. And I think now people are coming and saying, well, sustainability is a business opportunity, that our customers demand it. We can't get employees unless we're sustainable, that we need to, and the world demands it, the globe demands it, and they want to do the right thing. Now, sometimes they don't know how. And they come to Masdar City and say, hey, we want to align with you. We want to see how we can take your learning and be more sustainable. And so while we've seen a big push, and I think almost all the developers here are making a push towards sustainability, but I think in some ways it's the people we have. The Masdar City design and construction team have years of experience, even prior to Masdar, but years of experience built up in the 15 years that we've been doing Masdar City. We have learned a lot. And that is how we are able to keep pushing the boundaries. So while in the past we were the first people looking at LEED Platinum buildings, now looking at net zero buildings and making those commercially viable, the rest of the industry is catching up. So one example, when we started, we said we want to recycle 90% of construction waste. So we recycle the wood on site, it's used in landscaping. We recycle the concrete on site, it's used in parks and roads and other infrastructure. The glass and the metals all have to go off site for larger recycling areas. And so when we first did that, the contractor said, great, but we'll charge you extra for that. We said, okay, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. You just deliver it to us. We'll do it ourselves. And they found out that, oh, well, there's a market for glass and metals. And that there's actually a market for chipped wood, and there's a market for that, and that people in the construction industry need these materials. And we found that contractors were actually starting to take it offsite themselves. We said, no, wait, you said you didn't want to do that. We'll take that. And so the next time around, we didn't have to tell anybody you need to be doing recycling. They all said, oh, well, now we know how it's done. We can do recycling with you. So when we started, there was no, we actually we shipped in some supplies from farther than we would have liked to, because there was no recycled aluminum here. There was no recycled glass. Well, now you're looking at major industries here in supply chain that's able to supply that locally, because they've said, oh, well, if Masdar has a market for that, if Masdar City wants this, there must be other people that want it too. So we actually started also with a concrete batching plant on site, and it used an industrial waste product, recycled fly ash, to mix with cement to make the concrete that goes into Masdar City. Well, now lots of developers want low carbon concrete, so that's a real business. And so we've seen these industries grow up around being able to say, oh, let's do this for Masdar City, but I'll be honest, and I tell global companies here, we will not buy enough of your product for you to come from Germany or Japan or the US or Argentina, wherever you're coming from. If you're only planning on selling to Masdar City, it's not going to be profitable for you. You need to come here, believe in the region, believe in the changes you see, demonstrate your product at Masdar City, and then sell to the much larger market.
Okay, so I really love, that angle on how sustainability is business opportunity, right? And also how maybe at the beginning it seemed very costly, but with time, right, you created new markets, that really cater to recycled goods, and tapping into, I'd say, untapped value, right? That's been there the entire time, right? It's always been there, and it actually really brings to light a lot of recycled goods happen to be tremendous businesses along suppliers who understand the value of those goods. If it's tire waste, being able to create all these different types of products. And so really, what I really love about it is for other developers to understand, that this isn't really a burden, but this could actually be a lot of money on the table that they're not collecting. And also one of the things that I love, and I don't think that everyone has the same privilege as you guys do, but to an extent, you guys were able to impact your supply chain, to actually readjust their habits, because you guys were appealing enough potentially in terms of the amount of waste you guys were creating, and that really kind of created a ripple effect that now today they want your recycled goods. So that's a really exciting impact that you guys have, and it must be amazing, to be part of that.
Yeah, I think the ripple effect is exactly right. So when the first contractors that came here and the first architects that came here and started working, we told them, no, you have to be able to do this. Especially when Abu Dhabi rolled out the Estidamo Pro rating system. And they said every building is going to be at least 1 pearl, and every government building is going to be at least 2 pearl. And every building at Masdar City, we said it was going to be at least 3 pearl. And so the architects then told us that they would go work with other developers and other entities, and they would say, okay, well, we need a 1 pearl building. And the architect would say, well, do you want 2 pearl for free? That we've been working at Masdar City. Do you want 3 pearl? We can do this for you. It won't cost you anymore. We just have to think about it at the beginning. Start with a blank piece of paper and say, this is what we want. But we can do this without it costing you any more money because of what we learned at Masdar City. So you've seen those architects and contractors take the Masdar City learnings and then go out into the industry as well too.
Over here, you're really pointing out something that I think is going to be very interesting for a lot of the construction companies listening in. But I think that one of the greatest benefits that you just pointed out of seeing the wholesome process is actually having a innovation strategy starting from the design. Because I think if you're stepping in down the line, it becomes, and also this is for the innovators to understand, like the right time to actually kind of promote the idea is at the beginning of the stage, because if not, you're going to hear all these hurdles. Like, what feedback would you potentially have, along that line?
Look, you need, when you're innovating, you need to, before you go out and get your architect, before you get your contractor, you need the right people on your own staff. We have been blessed with just some exceptionally capable people, exceptionally capable to work here, exceptionally knowledgeable, and exceptionally dedicated. Yes, I know when I talk about it, it sounds easy. Let's not, I don't want to send out the message, this is something easy, or it just happens. It takes effort. So our first LEED Platinum building, we had a goal of every building, we're going to reduce energy consumption from ASHRAEA standards by at least 40%. And so when they ran the energy models and it came out to 32%. And so 32% was not 40. So we said, okay, let's sit down, let's put our team together, let's put our energy modelers together, let's put our best people in the room with the architects and say, how do we get there? And next time we run the energy model, it came back at 37% savings. And so it wasn't, and the next time it was 42. By the way, by the time we finally finished it, we got to 46%. And without increasing building costs. And this was not oh, look, we found one brilliant idea. We didn't discover electricity here. It was not, the science that you'll read about in textbooks and say, oh, this was one person alone in a lab with a brilliant idea. This was 10 people around a table with 120 ideas. And it was 120 ideas to take 14% energy consumption out of the building without increasing costs. Because every idea we were working at, I think, none of them hit 1%. So you had to go and chip away 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 until you got the best possible result. But that was not an easy process. You need to say, okay, I'm going to take more time up front. I'm going to plan better. And then when we go to construction, of course, then of course you want to be ready, and you want to make sure that the contractor's ready for what you've developed there. But it's not I think what Thomas Edison said, genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. I think that the team at Masdar City would agree with him on that. That it's a series of real work that goes into getting there. And look, I'm going to give you an example of a technology that I would say we didn't do again. And it's in because you probably interesting to everybody as well too. We put in in one of our residential buildings, we put in a recycling chutes in the buildings. So you walk up there, you tell you have 3 buttons: it's this garbage, it's this paper, or it's this other recyclables. And then the thing shifts and it goes into and it also puts a red light in if anyone's using it. No one else can open it, which is a safety feature. Well, this, from an O&M point of view, all of the physical movements around garbage have made it difficult to maintain. It takes expense to maintain. The next building, we just put 3 chutes in. It's a fraction of the cost with 0 maintenance. Mm-hmm. And so I think there are sometimes and that's one of our goals here is we want technologies that really support the goal, not technology for technology's sake, but technologies that are truly needed and ready. But that's the great part about experimenting with Masdar and being out there and pushing the edge. Okay, we have to be able to look at things and say, oh, 90% of what we've done has worked, but 10% we keep changing.
First of all, it sounds like you guys have incredible people. I also feel like you guys have an amazing culture, because getting in a room with 10 people who are able to share 120 ideas, getting to that without canceling those ideas on the process really means you guys are open, to really realizing things or looking at things from a lot of different perspectives, and it doesn't intimidate you, which I think there's a lot of people that, just dealing with that scope of thought is already, even one new idea is pretty challenging and intimidating. So it really sounds like you guys have an amazing culture. in Masdar. And I want to lead this into another question, which really is, I saw that you, together with Construction Week Middle East, discussed this article that came out on the difference between smart and sustainable, right? And a lot of it has to do with the KPIs and the manifestation of what's actually going to happen. I want to leave it open. Could you really help us understand what the difference is? What's the distinction between having something smart out there versus sustainable?
Well, look, and I think that to sum it up, you can be smart without being sustainable, but you can't be fully sustainable without being smart. Now, but a lot of what we do, and is intelligent, but not smart from an ICT point of view. We want to be sustainable a long time before we get to what would be considered smart, particularly at the building level, particularly at the master planning level. And we also have, particularly around transportation, using EVs, having charging stations, working with partners here, putting in autonomous transportation that would also classify as very smart. And looking at the way we use information technology and building management systems to help operate the buildings, we think would be very smart. But before we get to there, we flipped the whole master plan on its edge to try and encourage wind flow. So we had openings to catch the prevailing winds. We put narrow streets and buildings that shade each other. So if you go to, the city we often use is Shabam in Yemen, a city that whenever Yemen gets safe, I will call the Manhattan of the desert. But if you go for most of us, we'll never get there, but we've been to southern Italy and southern France, places that are hot. And you see narrow streets, you see community centers, you see a gelato store on every corner. You see places that are made to be walkable. You see thick walls and small windows. This is how people have built, how they've used the built environment to adapt to the climate you're in. And we wanted to do that first. None of that involves, what we call, technology per se, but it significantly both increases your outdoor lifestyle here, your ability to be outdoors, and reduces consumption in the buildings before we start with the building design. You're already at a point where you're going to be using less and creating a better lifestyle for people just by doing those things. By the way, the other thing is, as when people come to Masdar City and I walk around with them, and they feel the wind flow. When my parents came, this was amazing because we'd gone to the Grand Mosque first. It's a beautiful mosque, but it was a weekend in November, and because we're at the mosque, we all had to kind of be in long pants and long shirts, and it was pretty warm. It's November, it's still 35 degrees, and for me, that's 35 degrees is awesome. It's like a winter day, but for most people when they come to visit from around the world, 35 is pretty hot still. And they felt the breeze. And they said, well, there was no breeze before in the rest of Abu Dhabi. Did you create the wind? I said, well, I appreciate that, but that's something only God can do. They're like, no, do you have big fans in here? Where are the big fans that are creating this breeze? And there are no fans. It's just the way the buildings work together to create wind tunnels, to create a better outdoor lifestyle, and the way we shifted the whole city to catch those prevailing winds. And so you get reactions like that to people think, oh, well, you have some kind of overlaying technology on top of this, and no, that's using the architecture there and the master planning to work in the environment that we're in. And so that's intelligent planning. And then we layer the technology on top. In fact, one of the things we're working on right now is a command and control center. And so while we've often done everything at the building level, we're now at the point where we're large enough to say, okay, let's look at this holistically in one place. How are all of our buildings performing? How are the buildings performing in comparison to each other? What can we learn about the way different buildings are operating by looking at it in a single pane of glass, as well as for our facilities management team to be able to operate each of the buildings through an integrated building management system. So it's really two parts. It's okay, let's showcase our sustainability. What's happening with the buildings? What's an easy way? How do we engage with the public in a better way around the sustainability, as well as be able to operate and decrease the consumption? So whether you're decreasing the water consumption, decreasing the electricity consumption, or decreasing the cooling consumption, we believe that the technology that we're laying on top now will enable us to do that. And the proof will be in the pudding. If we look and say, okay, what do we do in 2023? What do we do in 2024? What do we do in 2025? How do we get better, not just with the new buildings we're doing, but with the buildings that were already built? How do we operate them in a smarter way? And I would say, some of some of the data that we've looked at, we can say, oh, well, this building, well, why doesn't the cooling consumption go down enough on the weekends? We think it should go down more. Oh, well, let's look at how we're operating that building. Is there a way we can decrease that more? Or why aren't we seeing, so you look, okay, this building is really decreasing on the weekends as much as it should. This one not as much, but and maybe that's a reason, like, oh, well, this one has 2 restaurants in it where people are still coming in to those on weekends, and a small mini mart there. But maybe there's a way we're operating the building that we can use this data that's showcasing, oh, you've got room for improvement here. And so we'll be looking at this over the next few years to say, now we've got this in place. Let's use this data now. And that's the smart layered on top of the sustainable.
So I love so many things that you discussed and shared, right? And one of the things that really stood out is, well, we always say that the construction process, really starts from the beginning of creating and manufacturing the different supplies. But where does it end? Most people look at it ending at the turnkey. And over here, that perspective of really how's this going to impact the operating of the different facilities, and the maintenance of it, and what the fruits can potentially be when you actually went through the rest of the cycle in a sustainable manner. There's so many fruits to be picked at those later stages. And it's really inspiring that you guys today are looking at not only the built and the actual building process, but also already at the maintenance of it after strategically collecting a lot of data and information.
Especially because if you're looking at the lifespan of a building, we'll throw out 50 years as the lifespan of a building, you're looking at 80% of the carbon output coming from operations. So yes, you have embedded carbon in the construction process, and the cement and steel and the glass that goes into that, but the majority of it, the majority of the energy is used during building operations. We actually did some analysis a few years ago for the Abu Dhabi government, and they came in and said, okay, we've got a few buildings, they're a bit old, what can we do to improve them? Should we put an LED lighting, and should we increase the windows, go to double pane glass, upgrade the MEP systems? What should we do here? And the analysis almost always, and we're not the only people to look at this, clean your air filters. The first thing you should do is clean your air filters. It is, if you have a car that's badly maintained, you're going to use more, you're going to use more petrol, you're going to use more diesel, whatever you're using there, you're going to use significantly more because you've not taken care of the car. And the same thing is true of buildings. The basic maintenance is basic, and it needs to be done first, and then you can layer on technology after that. But I think sometimes that gets overlooked, even by us at times. But it gets overlooked generally and globally in the construction industry. That you build that beautiful building, you've got the thing done. But if you're focused on sustainability, you have to be focused on operations.
Great. You're leading us into the last question, which is, you guys are the forefront of a lot of adoption of a lot of technology. What are our cities going to look like in the future? What's your perspective on that?
Well, I would say 2 things. I think you're hearing a lot about the 15-minute city globally, that people want to be walkable. They want better public transportation. They want to be walkable, but then because this is a more sustainable lifestyle, but they're also we're going to have to use buildings that are significantly more sustainable, that have renewable energy sources on site. And look, this depends on what part of the world you are. Obviously, where there's sun, solar is fantastic. Where you have better temperature differentials, heat sinks are amazing. There's a lot of different technology that you can use, but then you're also really going to have to focus on how do we reduce that consumption. And then I think the next stage after that is smart and integrated. So how do we take that renewable energy, trade it between buildings? How do we balance the grid? How do we use buildings that know that, okay, so I've got a lot more need for energy because I've got all these electric vehicle charging here, but I have wind. The wind is blowing in the middle of the night, and I'm not using much for factories. So how do I make sure I'm using that all to charge the vehicles? And then maybe the next time that 5 to 9 in the afternoon shift when we come home from work and we all want to cook at the same time and watch TV and turn on the air conditioning, I may be pulling from the cars in the building. So I think that you're really going to see smarter electrical grids, smarter energy systems, as well as more livable and more livable cities with better public transportation. I think that in a lot of those areas, people come in. We used to say at Masdar City, I still like it. Masdar City, one day all cities will be built like this. So you're going to see cities that look more like Masdar. So a better outdoor lifestyle, more connected lifestyle for the people that are living and working there, as well as real focus on how do we reduce energy consumption and then use renewable energy in every way possible. So the future looks bright. The future looks bright, Ellie.
Amazing. Steve, thank you so much for your time. This was super interesting. If you are listening to the podcast, comment, share, like, subscribe, leave us questions. This is meant to be engaging. If you have any thoughts that you want to share with us, please do. And hopefully we'll be able to respond and like. And Steve, thank you so much. This is amazing. Thank you, man. Thank you very much for joining. Yeah, thanks, guys. Comment, share, like.